Hey everyone, Laz here. Welcome back to the fourth episode of the Real Talk Laz Podcast. Today's going to be a little bit different. It's just going to be me, and I want to take this time to just tell you my story, right? Talk to you a little bit more about where I've been, what I've learned, and who I'm still becoming, right? I think, since I released three episodes of the podcast so far, I think it's important for people to know who I am. Obviously, there's a lot of followers that know me from various evolutions of my life, right? Whether that's elementary school, middle school, high school, college, different professional jobs that I worked at, you name it, right? But there's also a lot of you that don't know who I am, that just follow me based off this chapter of my life. So I want to take this time and kind of, at a high level, just go a little bit over who I am and my journey and, kind of take it from there. As y'all know, this podcast for me has always been something about real conversations, right? Keeping it raw, keeping it real. So I figured today I'd keep it unfiltered and kind of go back to the beginning and evolve throughout my life and, obviously share a bit more about myself, right? So I guess to start off, right? So who am I? So as y'all know me by Laz, my full name is Lazaro. I'm a proud first generation Cuban and Spanish American, right? So both my parents immigrated here with a dream. And fortunately for me, I'm their dream that's currently in motion, right? So my dad, he is Cuban, born and raised, and then my mom is from Spain as well. So both migrated here with a dream, and then after they came here, little Lazaro came along, and here I am, being able to talk to you all, right? With that, I grew up in a bilingual household, right? Although I did speak English, right? I did go to school and I spoke English and, all that good stuff. Spanish was my primary language at home, and it still is whenever I do talk to my parents, right? That was something that I didn't understand, growing up, why there was the two languages, right? So, in turn, I spoke English, right? I spoke English to my parents to help them, kind of better understand the language. And then ultimately learning Spanish, right, in parallel, kind of growing up was a huge benefit for me, both personally and professionally long term. And, I hope that one day if I do have kids, I would like to continue that legacy and make sure that they are bilingual as well. Because for me, like I mentioned, it was a huge benefit to myself, and it still is, right? Now, my dad's side, they're mostly here in New Jersey, and some family down in Florida as well. And then my mom and her side of the family, they all live in Spain, right? So kind of both cultures, right, have essentially shaped me in ways I can't fully explain. But honestly, I can just appreciate both cultures and understand them and learn them for who they are. As similar as they might be, they're definitely very different. Now, essentially, beyond the resume, beyond the podcast, right, I'm essentially someone that values integrity, loyal, and impact. I think the biggest thing in my life, and I'll talk about it more later on, but really just watching my parents grow as A, parents, right, but B, just individuals in their life and having that hustler mentality really struck to me about learning the value of a strong work ethic, having strong morals, and just values for yourself, right? I mean, at the end of the day, listen, we can all be, here just kind of going through the motions, or we can be ones that try to do the best we can with what we have and continue to grow and continue to develop and have that hustler mentality. So that's definitely something that I saw in both my parents and recognized that at a young age. And now as an adult, I could definitely appreciate that and thankful that they were like that, right? Because truthfully, I think that's the backbone of who I am, right? So, I guess a little bit more about my earlier life, my childhood. So, I grew up in a small, picturesque town in Linden, called Linden, New Jersey. Many of you may not know where the hell that is. I sure as hell, every time I tell people, I always tell them I'm either about 10 minutes away from Newark Airport or right next to Elizabeth or Rahway. And then they'll understand that that's where Linden is. But growing up, man, I had a great childhood. I can't complain. I mean, it was filled with real love, real laughter. I had tons of friends that all live within, a rock's throw of a distance, right? Whether it was across the street, down the street, or 2 blocks behind me. It was great. My friends at the time, they were awesome. We all kind of hung out, whether it was at the park that was at the end of the street. We played baseball or basketball or just chill, or we'd ride bikes. Although some may say that my bike riding wasn't as far of a distance based off restrictions from my parents, but that's neither here nor there. It was all good. And then, yeah, so I did that. So I grew up in Linden, went through the education system, both elementary, middle, and then high school. Definitely a lot different as I can imagine what it is now, but I think I made it out okay, right? I guess, right? So, a little bit more about my childhood. I mean, let's see. I talk about this with my aunt every day, but some of the core memories that I had was just, outside of my parents, right, was just seeing Harry Potter with my aunt. I hope she's listening to this and she'd get a kick out of it. But every Harry Potter movie, that was her thing. She'd come pick me up, go to the movies, eat popcorn, dinner, whatever it was. That was our thing. So I was very excited about that because I knew it'd be just kind of something that we bonded over, right? Which was great. Um, with that, we also every summer, my family, we drive down to Florida from New Jersey, and as many as you know, that's definitely a long drive, but it was fun, right? I was able to see my one aunt, my dad's sister, that lives down in Miami, and my 2 cousins. It was always a great time seeing them. They did live close to me growing up, and then some point in elementary school, not sure exactly when, but they had a better opportunity and they went down to Florida and been down there ever since. And pretty much for me, like other memories growing up, I guess weekends were kind of sacred, right? In my family. So um, I remember waking up and my grandmother, who lived with us on my dad's side, she'd always be cooking something. And being that she's Cuban, she had a great hand with cooking food that always just A, smelled delicious, but B, tasted phenomenal. So every time I get a chance, whether it's her food or her arroz con leche, it definitely brings back that memory of a child, right? And how I love that. And those are little things I always remember, right? And yeah, good times. And to this day, I still bother her at least once or twice a year to make that arroz con leche for me. She does, and usually gives me a huge pail to take home. So very thankful for that. Um, and then many of you may not know, but when I was growing up, karate was actually my first outlet to kind of just getting energy out, frustrations, or honestly just getting tired, right? I think for my parents as well. But yeah, so I did pretty much taekwondo from ever since I can remember, like elementary school, all the way pretty much up until like my freshman year of high school. Um, so yeah, so I did that. I stuck through high school up until like I said freshman year, and then I essentially made it up to a second degree black belt, which I have somewhere in my house. But yes, fun fact: not many of you all know that. And then lastly, I think as a kid, right? I always knew I wanted to make my parents proud, whether it was like getting good grades, whether it was being active, whether it was being social, whatever you name it. I mean, granted, as a kid, like I didn't really know what was up, right? Besides very strict. Hey, be home at this time if you're out. You need these grades or X, Y, Z, right? So I just knew, like, ultimately, I just want to make them proud, right? I know how much they've sacrificed, and for me, and I'll be eternally grateful for that. But it was something that was in the back of my mind. I had no idea how, but I just knew I had to, right? And then lastly, I'll kind of leave it like this with my childhood and earlier life. But the one thing I do not necessarily regret, I guess to a certain degree, but I remember talking to my mom a lot, like every year, like, oh man, I can't wait for the next year in school, or I can't wait for the next thing. And, I don't know. I was always just looking forward to that next thing in life. And, for me, it was like a sign of growth, right? But I remember my mom always bringing me back down and making me realize that the future is always good and all, but the present is what values the most. And for me, I wish I would have taken more advantage of that. I mean, I did to a certain degree, but there's times in my life where I think back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have really not taken some of those years for granted and just stay true, right, in the present, if that makes sense. Versus just thinking about the next thing or thinking about long term or thinking about the future. I mean, that's always great and all to have plans, but I think honing in on the present day would have been better. And now to this day, I always reflect on that, right? And I always tell myself, like, hey, it's always good to have future aspirations, but every day I try to soak up the day, soak up the activity, soak up the memories, because really those are the things that personally for me just carry me through my life, right? And it's hard, right? It's a lot easier said than done, and I'm sure y'all can agree on that. But yeah, that's something that from my childhood I kind of took upon, and yeah, started to reflect on and take it from there. So I guess moving on from my childhood and talking a little bit more about like schooling and college. So yeah, so as I mentioned, I grew up in Linden, so I did the whole elementary school. Went to school number two. Then I did middle school over at McManus, and then my final culmination was over at Linden High School, which again I'm sure has changed a lot since I graduated about 15 years ago now. I think, yeah, if I'm doing the math. Yeah, 15 years ago, which is absolutely absurd to think about. But yeah, 15 freaking years ago, man. I remember the 10-year reunion was 2020 for us. And well, I don't have to dive too much deeper as to what happened in 2020. So that definitely got skipped. I was kind of looking forward to it, right? As cliche as it may be. I mean, there's a lot of people that I talked to back then that, either just nowadays, like photos on Instagram or social media, or, the occasional, hey, if I see them out and about, I'll talk to them. But predominantly, I wanted to leverage that just dinner or whatever the hell it was just to catch up, man. I mean, life is busy and life is crazy and chaotic. And sometimes it's nice just kind of hone in on those memories as a kid and, be able to reflect and laugh at all the dumb and fun, crazy stuff we did back then in high school. But yeah, overall, I mean, high school had its moments, some good, some very memorable, and then some were forgettable. But ultimately, I always kept pushing forward. I was that kid where I was in the JRRTC program back in high school. Those who know, you know. Great part of my life. I think it kind of shaped me a lot in high school. I didn't really know essentially what to do, and not necessarily lost, but again, that kind of helped provide a bigger structure for me as to kind of like the importance of little things, right, that we may not do, right. And I don't know, it was a great experience overall. I met some great friends. To this day, we always joke about some of the stuff we did back then, and obviously it led me to who I am, because that evolution of my life in high school with ROTC essentially kind of piggyback into my next evolution, which was college, right? And some of you may know, some of you may not know, but I attended Norwich University, which is the Military College of Vermont, for 4 years. I have my Military College of Vermont degree up here. And yeah, it was a great 4 years, man. But it was tough. It was hard as shit. I'm not gonna lie. And those of you that are follow me, that listen to this, and that know of Norwich and have gone through it, it's definitely tough, but very rewarding, right? I mean, that place itself built my discipline like anything else, and although it was challenging, especially your rookie year, it was very structured, which helped, and provided pretty much what you needed to do every single day, what you needed to wear every single day, and such a routine and lifestyle that you know it's crazy. When you're there, you're like, man, I can't wait to get the hell out of here. I'm ready to graduate. I'm ready to see the real world. And we always said that, and it's funny every time we would say that there would be an alumni, whether it was like alumni weekend or various events throughout the 4 years, that they would always say, hey, we were in the same shoes you were. We knew how much you wanted to get the hell out of here. But I promise you that those 4 years are the best 4 years of your life, with your friends that you made brothers with, sisters with, you name it, and just the overall experiences and memories that last a lifetime. And of course, right, being the asshole or kid that I was back then, I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries. I'm just trying to get out of here. But man, it's funny. I can't echo that enough. That's true. Like, there's some great 4 years. Again, very difficult, but very rewarding. And it provided me with a lot. It provided me how to, lead, right? Whether it was in that military environment those 4 years, or most importantly in the corporate world in the future, and also how to push through those mental walls. As a rook, you're faced with a lot of obstacles. Every day is different. Every day is challenging. But even as an upperclassman, right, like you have to endure a lot. And Vermont's no joke as a whole, as a state, right? There's a lot of days where it's just freaking gray outside. It's mopey. It's terrible. So that destroys your confidence and your self esteem. B, the environment of school, right? We're not a traditional school environment where you're getting drunk on the weekends, partying, fraternities, all that good stuff, right? It was a lot more rigorous in that sense. And then lastly, just the academic side, right? Like, it's still college at the end of the day, right? So it was tough, man, but it was great. It was a great 4 years. It made me who I am. And although, like, every day during Rook Week or Rookdom or after that, I often ask myself, like, what the hell am I doing here? But it was great. And like I said, although I was unsure of the outcome every single day or every single semester or every single year, I just learned to trust the process, right? And ultimately, those years taught me how to carry myself, especially in rooms where I didn't feel seen, and give me the confidence to really pivot into my career. Now, although I wasn't able to commission due to medical, right, my vision is terrible. Kind of the hand that I was dealt with, right, which kind of, going there was the whole purpose of, being in the Navy, being in the military as an officer, which is why I chose Norwich versus a traditional state school. But, that in itself, right, not being able to commission, obviously, it took a toll on me, for sure. But I knew that there was something bigger and better out there for me, whether I wanted to understand it or not. I knew that was the plan, right? So again, I'm very fortunate to have graduated, done the program, done the 4 years. I still talk to a lot of my best friends from there. We were in all of each other's weddings, babies' birthdays, dinners, you name it. Excellent time. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, right? So extremely thankful for that. Now, a little bit more about kind of family life, right? So as I mentioned earlier, my parents were and they are phenomenal, man. They they love me unconditionally and taught me that hard work isn't a choice, right? It's who we are. And, as they got older, as I mentioned earlier, like just their work ethic was strong. Their mindset was strong. Again, they weren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. But the one thing I can't ever deny is that my parents didn't love me. My parents would give me the shirt off their back. My parents sacrificed a lot for me, and ultimately I owe it to them, right? For who I am and who I'm continuing to grow, and hopefully as a parent one day I can be able to pass along parts of what I've learned from them, the good and everything, and be able to just show them that they did a phenomenal job, and I hope they're proud, man. Every day I try to be better. And, even though my parents now, they are separated, they are divorced, they still show me their love in their own unique ways. And I appreciate that. I know, that whole process and evolution of my life. And when they did get a divorce, right, it was very difficult for me. But really, for them, I can imagine as well. And I ultimately more so thought it about myself, because that's ultimately who I can think of, right? But when it came to that scenario, but yeah, I mean, hey, they're great, and the one biggest lesson that they've taught me, aside from the hard work and their work ethic, was that ultimately you have to take care of yourself first, because one day like they won't be there, and I God willing, it's many years from now, but yeah, that was the biggest thing. That hey, we love you unconditionally. We want to do everything for you, but they taught me at a very young age to do things for myself, not because they didn't want to, but because they wanted to teach me to become that man, that person that can rely on myself first, and then be able to yes, leverage the help of others, leverage the help of a wife, spouse, you name it, but really be able to do things for myself. And again, that's another thing that I'm forever grateful for. Because yeah, I just although my wife, she hates it, right? That sometimes I don't ask for help, or I'm very stubborn at times and do things myself. I mean, that's kind of who I am, right? And that's okay. So I'm learning, right, day by day. And yeah, as I mentioned, man, my wife, she's my anchor, man. Whether it's a day trip, whether it's a 10-day European adventure, she's down for it all. She loves me in the most authentic way, and I love her more than words can ever say or tell. We've been married now for 6 years, come August 4th, and we've been together for almost 10 years. She's been kind of my rock throughout the evolutions of my life, whether it was professional, whether it was personal, right? Whether it was you name it, she's always been there. And again, I can't thank her enough for just being that rock and that stability for me, because there were definitely some low points in my life, with everything going on with just life, right? That she was that light at the end of the tunnel, and provided that stability for me, and that's something that I'll never learn how to say thank you enough. So thank you for understanding me, especially when at times I don't make it easy. But I love you, so thanks, honey. And then I guess pivoting to my professional life. So yeah, as I mentioned, I went to Norwich. I started off actually with a degree in computer security and information assurance, because at the time I did have a Navy ROTC scholarship. And with that scholarship, I had to get something technical, right, to then provide later on in the Navy. But unfortunately, when I realized I was not able to commission anymore, um, I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do this hard ass degree for? Let me do something a little bit more easier, right? So I went to criminal justice route, CJ the easy way. Those who know, right? CJ the easy way. And I did ultimately minor in Spanish, which I was going to double major, but there was like 4 or 5 more classes I had to take. And let's be real, I didn't really need it for the degree. I'm already fluent as we speak. So Yeah, did that. And, do I regret getting CJ? Not necessarily. I think at that time in my life, that's the best route that I could take. For me at that point, now looking back from my future self to my past self, absolutely. I think, that could have provided a lot of different opportunities for me. Although I'm very fortunate in my career now, it could have been just a different career, right? So, and that's okay. It's all good. I mean, I'm not regretting that and I'm not angry about it, but it's just funny how that life works, right? One of the reasons, once I realized I couldn't commission was that I didn't want to be behind a desk working on coding all day or whatever the case may be behind a desk. I wanted to be out and about, and jokes on me. 10 years later, I'm behind a desk working um, in my career at home, right? So that's funny how life works. But I'm very grateful of where I am today. Very thankful, and my colleagues and coworkers there, they're all amazing. So thank you all. But kind of getting to my road now and my career now wasn't really easy because once I graduated Norwich, like I had no plans, right? Like I had no essentially career route, right? It was a blank slate. And really it was tough, right? It was challenging. And at that point in my career, I really felt like an adult because I'm like, man, as a kid growing up, even in college, like I relied on my parents a lot. My parents were always kind of like that guiding light for me. I knew I could always lean on them, and to this day, right, it's still true. But um, that day of graduation, although I was extremely excited and all that, I felt kind of overwhelmed because I'm like, shit, like this is life, man. Like now I'm in control. Like there was always something next, right? So elementary school, I knew I had middle school, then middle school, high school, and then high school. Although everyone that goes to college, I knew that was my route. So I had like that next step to look forward to, right? As I mentioned earlier, I always looked forward to that next step, right? So when I graduated, I felt kind of lost because I'm like, shit, I have no next step, right? And although I applied to jobs and things like that, like I just didn't know what was next. That uncertainty kind of ate me up, right, and kept me going at night, and was like, shit, like what do I do? So I knew ultimately I wanted to do something with people, right? As much as an introvert that I was and am to this day, I still find myself very extroverted at times with people, and especially my career field, right? So I ended up just taking a job in retail for a little bit. Got to make money, right? I had to make money. I had to help my parents out through their tough times, and everything going on, and most importantly, pay my loans, pay my life, and can't rely on them forever, right? So I got a job in retail, working at a watch store for a little bit in the mall. Quickly realized that was not going to be my long term career. Then I pivoted to a retail store based off of a coworker of mine. Went to work for one of like the largest flooring companies at the time. Worked my way up and became a store manager, where I managed two stores, two different staffs, which is great. It taught me a lot about myself as a leader. It taught me that people aren't always perfect, and there's always a gray area, right? Like no one's black and white. As much as movies illustrate that, as much as people perceive that, like there's no black and white ever in life. So I knew like I had to kind of adapt myself at a very young age, and obviously going to Norwich and having that leadership structure and the leadership training and just ability to have the opportunity to lead rooks, right? To have the opportunity to then lead upperclassmen, right? Like that kind of gave me a foundation. But the real world's a hell of a lot different, right? So I started off doing that. Retail at the end of the day is retail. I worked a lot of weekends as a store manager, a lot of holidays, and I knew that wasn't it long term for me. So my wife at the time, girlfriend, she advised me about this corporate job where I can go Monday through Friday. It was tech sales. It wasn't the best opportunity, but it was one of those where she mentioned, and still to this day, take a step back to take a step forward in life. And I did that. So I left the retail store management front. I took a pay cut, went the tech sales route, did that for a little bit, got my foot in kind of like the corporate environment, understood the ladder a little bit, and then I transitioned from tech sales into recruiting. I worked for one of the largest recruiting staffing firms for a while. It was about almost 2 years. There, I learned a lot of foundation of recruiting, but also was able to put my strong work ethic that I had from my parents, right, and apply that into my work because as y'all may know or may not know, staffing agencies rely on the harder you work, the more fills you get, the more money you make, right? So that was always kind of my motivator, right? But it was a grind. It was long hours, and at times just too much, right? So then I quickly pivoted out of the staffing agency world after about 2 years, and I made my way into more of an internal staffing partner role. And I've been doing that ever since, about 7 or 8 years now. So while I've transitioned out from a few different companies and now working at, where I currently work now, it's always been on the back of my mind to work hard, understand people are different, right? Especially when COVID came and we all worked remote and being in meetings and understanding people's priorities, whether it was families, education, you name it, right? It was all different, right? And I had to continue to be in that gray zone and understand, like, hey, people aren't what you want them to see, and vice versa. People aren't expecting you to be them. And you kind of had to adapt to that, which is great, right? I've had a lot of mentors. I've had a lot of great people that kind of educated me and helped me throughout the way. But yeah, overall, great career so far. I'm very fortunate, very blessed, and I'm very happy to be where I am today. And of course, growth is always right. Whether that's moving to shifting to different teams, shifting different priorities, like that's always the purpose. And this place has always provided that for me. So I'm very thankful. And with that being said, I mean, I just ended up going back to Norwich because of work, right? They enticed me and motivated me to go back and get a degree based off one of the programs that they currently offer with employee tuition, right, and things like that, and reimbursement. So I ended up going back to Norwich for my MBA. So I recently walked in May of 2025, and then I completed my degree back in February of 2025. So it's very surreal going back to Norwich, and you would never in a million years have thought like I'm coming back here. Obviously, my experience was a little bit different. It was online, it wasn't in person. I didn't have that core background, right? I wasn't waking up at 5 a.m. for PT anymore. I wasn't doing drill, right? Like all that stuff. So it's very different, but I don't know. It's something about that campus, man, that always reminisces me and just brings me back to 2010 to 2014 and all the great memories, all the highs, all the lows, right? But it's been great, right? So I guess moving forward, right? So as we're all here on this platform, right, listening to me, whether it's on YouTube you're watching or whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts, what that looks for me, I think for me, the last couple of years, as you can imagine and know based off my videos that I do, I didn't really prioritize my own mental health. And that's something I struggled with. And I always put others first. That's a selfless character in me, right? Always doing that. And I realized that that's great and all. And I'm very proud for having that. But, I need to realize and I came first, right? And as selfish as that seems, it was the truth, right? So I began to prioritize my mental health. And then I took a leap of faith and I started this channel, right? I started Real Talk Laz. I knew I wanted to help others that are in similar situations to me or just not prioritizing their mental health or need to work on their mental health, all that. That's kind of the whole goal. And, I see it all the time, whether one person watches my video or 500. I just want to make an impact on one person's day at a time. Mental health is one of these vulnerable topics that everyone goes through it, no matter who you are in life. And we all have our mental health challenges. But the percentage of people that want to actually talk about it, speak about it, and be about it slim to none. So really the goal is to transform the way people see mental health, feel about it, and ultimately learn, right? If I can provide any value from my experience in life, um, that's my goal at the end of the day, is just to help others, right? And ultimately it's a healing journey, right? Because as you all are listening to me, I'm also kind of listening to myself, right? And reiterating the mentality of the priority of mental health, prioritizing myself, not letting others' emotions weigh me down, right? You name it. Success to me meant a lot of things growing up, and it meant having fancy cars, having titles, having all this luxuries, you name it. But now that success to me is just having peace, man. Having the energy to do stuff in life whenever I want, how I want to do it, being able to have a peaceful mindset, not having to worry about anything. And I still challenge, have that challenge. Again, I'm not perfect, but every day I just realize, like, hey, control what you can control, be who the best you can every day, and just be better than yesterday, right? One day at a time is my biggest thing. Um, and then lastly, I guess if there's one thing that I can tell my younger self is, hey man, you're enough. Just who you are, just doing what you're doing. But also don't settle. Keep up the motivation, keep up the hard work, keep shooting for the stars. But in that mist, don't get lost of prioritizing yourself, and it'll all be all right in the future. So thank you all. I appreciate your time. I know we talked about the podcast, and again, I want to just grow into a space where men can speak freely, women can speak freely, revolving mental health, their challenges, their struggles, where ultimately our vulnerability is a strength, right? It's not a weakness. And, I just want others to see themselves for who they are, and just being better on a day to day basis, right? So, again, I appreciate you all for listening or watching, for being part of this journey for me. We all ultimately carry a story worth telling. And this was mine, right? Again, it was very high level, but I wanted to talk about important things and aspects of my life. And, to my best friends, watching, my family watching, thank you all. I love you all. You're my why, right? You're my purpose, and you're the reason why I'm pushing through every day. So, I'll talk to you all next week. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to start rolling out guest speakers. So, my first guest is one of my best friends from Norwich. Him and I's relationship is, great. We've had our rough patches. I'm sure we'll talk about that more in our podcast. But overall, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. And I love you, man. I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. And until then, everyone, stay real. Have a great day. Talk soon.